And it's a Thursday morning, and Stephen Schmidt is with us again today. And he is going to, what's the deal with differentiated instruction? Because it's just a new way of saying that old thing about a multi-level classroom, right?
Yeah, it is.
You've been around too long when you got three names for the same thing, right?
Yeah, I do have two names for this workshop. So I have one with multi-level, but I forget what it's called. But anyways, we're doing the differentiated instruction. But the multi-level one has a lot of similarities, I will say.
Well, take it away, Stephen.
Thank you, Kim. And please call me Steve. I always feel like I'm in trouble when I'm called Steven. Flashbacks from childhood. But anyway, welcome to the workshop today. It's great to see everyone today. Speaking of seeing everyone, if I can't see you, please turn on your webcam if you can. And I realize there's probably five good reasons why we may not be able to turn on our webcam based on the technology, or we're using the state issued laptop with the Windows 98 interface, or all these other things we may have very good reasons for that. But if you can, please turn your webcam on. I do think that makes a big difference in participation and just feeling part of things. And I did watch some of the videos that Kim and Becky had done about the conference, and I saw that that was something that was suggested there, and I loved it. It was great to see that. So thank you if you can, and I realize that you may not be able to, and that's okay. But thank you for turning your webcams on if you can, and that is very much appreciated. All right. Let's talk about differentiated instruction, but first, let's talk a little bit about some other things before we dive into this. I know many of you have worked with many of you before. If I don't haven't met you yet, look forward to working with you and meeting you today. I'm Steve Schmidt. I have been involved in adult education for 32 years, and I'm excited to be with you and the South Dakota educators today. And so it's great to be here as always, and really value the long-term partnership that I've had with your state. And it's great to be back. And thank you again, Kim, for inviting me. And I want to do a public shout out today, to take just a minute and shout out to someone in South Dakota who's been very important in my career, and that is Becky Lemke. Little known fact is that back in 2012, no, maybe it was 2011, Becky was my coach for STAR as I was going on the journey to become a STAR trainer. And I really want to thank Becky because she really put in my life the about coaching. She was my coach, and she really showed me what a good coach is and what a good coach does. And she really helped me through the whole STAR certification process, which took about a year to do. And when I'd get down, if I remember one time I failed one part of it, and she was like, "Oh, yeah, you can do it. And let's talk about some ways that we can make this work." And so when I was down, she picked me up, and I do a lot of coaching today. And I think, Becky, I want to say thank you because you were really the person who inspired me to become a coach. So just wanted to do this in a public way. And I know you're probably saying, Steve, I wish you hadn't done that, but I'm going to do it anyways. And thank you so much, Becky, for the difference you made in my life and in my career. And I've learned so much about reading instruction from you that I would never have learned otherwise. So thank you for allowing me this minute to thank Becky publicly.
That's very kind of you, Steve. It was my pleasure.
All right, all right. So if you don't have the handout for today's session, please grab it because I will be referring to it a lot. And you can find it on the website for the Winter Institute, and it's just below the session. I think it says click here to get the handout. And if you click there, it will bring up the handout as a PDF document. And it's also great just to have the PDF version because there are a number, there's a few clickable links on there. And I've tried a couple times to click on the links with the paper copy, and I found that it doesn't work so well. But if you click on the link on the PDF link, you will be able to get the different resources that are there from the clickable links. So I don't, I'll keep working on clicking on the paper handout anyway. But anyways, and again, Stephanie and others, don't worry if you can't do your webcam. That's okay. That is okay. So let's get into what we're going to do today. First, our objectives, and I'm on the handout on page 1, which doesn't have a number, but it is the first page. So at the end of today's workshop, our goal is that we'd be able to describe methods for differentiating instruction for our adult learners, and we'll hopefully be able to apply those techniques inside the classroom. And we'll leave you with several resources that I hope that you'll find valuable. So that is our goal for today. Well, let's do it. Let's get into it. All right, here we go. And this is time to share, which we can do either in the chat or we can unmute. And we had some great participation in the session I was part of yesterday, and I would invite that again today. Thank you in advance for your participation. If someone came up on the street, you're walking down the streets of DeSmet, let's say, and someone said, "Hey, what's a multi-level class?" What would you tell them? Or maybe you were walking in Mitchell, or maybe in Rapid City, or maybe someplace else, and they asked you, "Hey, what's a multi-level class?" What would you say?
Feel free to unmute so we can have a good conversation.
I would say that it means there are more than one level in a classroom.
Thank you, Diana. Let's see, Jeremy gives a textbook definition. Very good. Thank you. And oh, unique strengths. Thank you, Andrew. I love the strength-based approach you brought to that. Let's see. Thank you, Jennifer. And let's see, Stephanie says skills everywhere from beginning to advanced, ready for college, and all in the same space. The molecules are sharing the same space. We have table level 2 and table level 5 are in the same class. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Hey,
Well,
Steve.
we've heard. Go ahead, please, Becky.
Yeah, so I just want to throw out here, every class I've ever taught, including in public high school, has been a multi-level class. I think that we sometimes fool ourselves in adult ed into thinking that we're unique. Every single class I've ever taught has been a multi-level class.
Well, my sister's talks about her kindergarten classroom and its levels. I'm like, okay, unpotty trained to reading. You want to talk about different levels. We can talk about 2 and 6 as adults, but what about not potty trained and reading?
Is there a correlation between potty training and reading? I
I
must have
think
missed that study.
I think there is because yeah, if you can send your kid to kindergarten at 6 and they aren't potty trained yet, and it's just not a medical issue, it's another issue.
I was just
Okay.
thinking too, just building on that strength based that everybody said, but they also bring different experiences. And I think their experiences are really rich when they're adults. And so I think that's a huge win for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for the good thoughts. So here we go. Here is my definition of a multi-level class. It's any class with more than one student. And that is truly the multi-level class and goes back to what Becky was sharing earlier. It's just, all of our classes are really multi-level classes unless we're doing a study with one student. So this is applicable to every single class that we do. So I really don't think that differentiated instruction is really very complicated. And I think in many ways we're doing elements of differentiated instruction throughout what we do. And it's basically we're trying to serve all students. Dr. Carol Tomlinson is the genius behind a lot of the work that's done in differentiated instruction. And she's written books and done a lot of things. And she has a good website with a lot of things there as well. I love this simple quote that she says, really what differentiated instruction is a teacher, looking to the needs of students, small groups of students, rather than teaching the class like everybody was the same. And I know our school experiences, we've been in classes where instructors didn't really care about making this real to all the students. They were all about the content, and it was all about, we're just going to teach the content, and whether you get it or not, I don't care. They're not paying me to get into the weeds with you and try to help you out. I'm just here to teach the content. And remember how you felt in a class like that? It was just like, okay, the instructor really doesn't care a whole lot about whether I learn or not. They're just serving up the content, and those classes are probably not ones that we remember fondly. So we want to try to attend to the learning needs of various students inside the class. Your definitions are one thing, and they're all well and good, but I love analogies more. And this analogy is one I learned a few months ago, and I love this. It's differentiation is like climbing a mountain. And so all students are expected to reach the top of the mountain. We have high expectations. We want to see our students reach their goals. But how we're going to get to the top of the mountain is going to vary. Some are good mountaineers, so to speak, and they can take the steeper trail. They can get there quicker. They need less support. But then a lot of our students in adult ed are not taking that path. They are here in our programs for a reason. And so they're going to need support. And that support might be taking the less steep trail that has a lot of switchbacks here and there. And maybe the student needs a walking stick to support them as they go. Maybe they're going to need more water. Maybe they're going to need trail mix with extra nuts in it to help them. So we're all going to get to the top of the mountain. Just how we get there is going to vary. I love that better than any definition. So think about kind of in the back of our minds this mountain analogy about for differentiation. And I love how that picture is what really supports me through differentiation. So let's play Have You Ever? Are we ready to play Have You Ever? Here we go. Have you ever given students extra time to complete an assignment? Anyone ever done that? I bet we have. Have you ever given an alternative assignment to a student? Like, for example, you had given a writing assignment and the student said, I don't know, could I do a PowerPoint or a Google slide presentation instead? And you said, sure, you can go ahead and do that. And they did it, and they were able to show their learning through that. That's differentiation. Have you ever looked at your classroom of students and seen a bunch of blank stares and the 10,000-yard look and realized that they weren't getting what you were laying down, and so you decided to change the way you taught it? You've done differentiated instruction. Have you ever grouped students in a certain way to help them learn better? And maybe that was a group of students at the same ability. Maybe this was a different mixed ability level, and you group them together and they learned faster and they learned better. Have you ever told any students that they were capable of learning? And I'm sure we have all done that. And if so, you've done differentiated instruction. So yay, good for you. Pat yourself on the back. And we've done this, and we can do this, and we're going to learn some other ways to do this today. Let's see, Jeremy, thank you for your comment where you said some of your most enjoyable teaching experience have been with multi-level group students. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that comment. Okay, so how can we do differentiated instruction, or again, just making our learning relevant to students? We can do this in really 4 different ways, and I'm on page 1 still of the handout toward the bottom. We can change the content that students are learning, or otherwise adapt what the knowledge or the skills that students are learning. We can adapt that in some way, shape, or form. A lot of what we do is we really, in differentiation, is change the process or the way that students are making sense of the information. We modify the activity. We give more time. We give more support. We do a lot of the tiered type activities, different levels of activity that we'll talk about in a few minutes. We could also change the product or how students show what they've learned. We can give them choices in how they show they've learned. They can write, they can talk, they can take a quiz, they can produce a presentation. We give them options in how they show what they've learned. And one thing that's lesser known, but I think maybe one of the more important things, is we can change the climate or the tone in our classroom. We can adopt more of a growth mindset type learning and the positive belief of whatever our students are bringing into the classroom also. And we're going to make all those changes based on student differences in what their readiness is, what they might be interested in, and what they bring into the classroom, both the strengths and the challenges, as folks were saying earlier. So, Kim had talked about AI as the teacher's friend for differentiation. That's a coming attraction. We are definitely going to get to that. Thank you for bringing that up. So, big picture, these are ways we can change, but let's get into the nitty gritty. And one of the big ways that we are able to do differentiation is take the same activity. We want all our learners to be able to do the same learning outcome, but we're going to do this at different difficulty levels. So the way we do this, and we do this often as instructors, we look at an activity and we think, well, how can I do this maybe at 2 different difficulty levels? Or if we're really having a wide range in the classroom, maybe we could look at 3 different difficulty levels. And so we just ask ourselves these questions. How can I make this easier? How can I make this more complex? How can I modify maybe the amount of structure I give? Am I going to give my lower level students more scaffolded help? Am I going to give them more time? Am I going to give them options in how they show what they've learned? So we're thinking about these, and we make these instructional decisions all the time in our classes. So are we ready for the shocking statistic of the day? Are we ready? Okay, so everybody's still awake? I think we are. So actually, I have 2 shocking statistics. One is I learned yesterday that South Dakota has more shoreline than the state of Florida. And I had no idea. More shoreline in South Dakota, not coastline, more shoreline than the state of Florida. That was shocked. I've learned the Missouri River and its many tributaries, and there's a large lake that starts with a O that I wasn't sure how to pronounce, so I'm not going to pronounce it. That was one shocking statistic. You probably already know that. I had no idea. The second shocking statistic is relating to writing instruction. And the statistic is this: beginning writers spend 99% of their time generating content. In other words, they're trying to create what they're going to write, getting ideas and producing writing. And this probably comes as no shock to any of us that have taught writing, because typically 2 things that I always heard for years, what my students would say would be, I don't have anything to write with. And the second one is, I don't know where to start. That's the big thing. So let's look at differentiation with writing specifically, because I know writing is probably something that's not taught as much and not taught nearly as well, because we don't always have the background in writing instruction that maybe we'd like to have. So let's look at how we can do some differentiation with writing. Join me on page 3 of the handout, please. Page 3, if you'll flip on the inside, and page numbers for most pages are at the bottom in fairly large size text. So page 3, one of my favorite writing techniques is a sentence frame. And there's nothing new under the sun with this. These things have been around for a long time. And you may have heard them called paragraph frames. You may have heard this called a fill in the blank. But essentially what a frame is we have taken away, the student says, I don't know where to start. So we said, okay, I'm going to give you some support, and I'm going to show you where to start. And so we have at the beginning of a sentence, we've started the sentence for the student, and all they have to do then is fill in the blank. So frames are great to help students become more confident writers. And you can see a couple of frames. What I love when I go to a PD session is that I get something new that I can use, or something maybe that I'd forgotten about that I can use in class that doesn't take 8,000 years of prep time to do. I've been at PD sessions where we've gotten great ideas, but I'm thinking, man, that would take me like 8 hours to create. There's no way I could do that. Frames don't take long at all. Frames you can do in a couple of seconds. And so they are an easy way to make writing easier for our lower level students. Or if we have just covered some material or presented some material and we want to check and see how our students have learned it, we can easily create a sentence frame with something like, the main idea of what we learned today was, and then give students that blank space and let them go. So frames are wonderful for doing that. We see a couple of examples on page 3. If you're using frames or having ideas about frames, would love to hear that inside the chat, please. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. And this is open discussion. This is time where we can unmute. This is time where we can flood the chat with great thoughts. So let's say we have a class that has beginning writers, that, in other words, these writers are very non-confident, unconfident, don't have confidence with their skills. We have some intermediate writers who feel decently comfortable, and they can usually write a few sentences, write a decent paragraph without too much help. And then we have some more advanced writers where all we need to do is give them a topic, and they're confident enough about generating ideas and creating something. Let's say we had this class, multi-level students, more than one class. How could we have students in this multi-level class with beginning, intermediate, and more advanced level writers? How could we have them all write about the same topic? The floor and the chat are open.
Steve, I saw a really great example of this in a class that I observed. I did classroom observations in November and December, and one of our teachers, Debbie Skokin, who's not on here, so I can totally embarrass her in absentia, teaches low-level English language learners. And she had told me ahead of time that when they do writing, she had switched to not write a sentence, but we're going to write for 2 minutes. And again, she's got a wide range. She's got I basically have no English up to I'm doing pretty good and I'm almost ready to go into low beginner class. So she said, we write for 2 minutes, and some people can produce 2 words in response to the prompt in that 2 minutes, and some people can produce a paragraph. And those outcomes are fine. So, that's one of those expecting a different product from the end. And, instead of telling students to write for quantity or volume, just we're going to spend 2 minutes writing, and whatever you produce at the end of that 2 minutes is fine.
Yeah, thank you, Becky. Love that technique. And especially it's good to emphasize with that, we're not really interested in, grammar and spelling and that punctuation, just right. Yeah, that is a great technique. Others, how could we have all students at different ability levels write on the same topic?
I've done activities like this before. I think it's the New York Times has a what's going on in this picture that's fabulous. So I pick one that I know that they'll have questions about. And I put it on the board and we talk first, always talk before write, generate some keywords, write those keywords on the board. I might give students sentence starters that they can choose to use if they like, but they don't have to. And then I also give them some time to write. I collect the writing so I can read it after class. And then, of course, I do the big reveal of what is actually going on in this picture.
That's good, Kate. I don't know what LSS stands for. That's after your name.
Lutheran Social Services, and CNA is Center for New Americans. So we're one of the programs here in South Dakota. We work with immigrants and refugees in the Sioux Falls area.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to say LSS for you is Learning Strategy Superstar for you. So congratulations on getting that notification there. Learning Strategy Superstar. Let's see, Stephanie says we might use the same newspaper clipping, but students produce their own work. So we're bouncing off this. And thank you, Becky, for putting the what's going on in this picture and what's going on in this graph. Both wonderful for math, for social studies inside of the chat. So thank you. We've had some good thoughts, some good ideas with this. My humble suggestion would be, okay, there's no one right answer to this. We could do a lot of different things. So maybe with the beginning student, we could do a sentence frame. Maybe with the intermediate student, we could do a paragraph frame. In other words, we've got 4 or 5 sentence frames together with more blank space and less of the wording up front or at the back. And then the advanced writers, we could basically let them go and we could feel confident they could craft their own paragraph. So that is one way that we could do it. And I just want to say there's hope. I know sometimes we really struggle and we look at our students with their writing. And I want to offer one example of a student that I've been working with the last several years, namely my son, who about 2 years ago, it was a challenge, and he was 16 years old at the time, to get him to write a sentence with punctuation, with a capital letter, with a period at the end. And it was like pulling teeth to get him to write one sentence. He was homeschooled before he went off to college this fall, and I kept working with him and working with him and pulling my hair out and pulling my hair out. And we did one day an argument writing exercise, and I let him pick the topic, and he wrote on video games because he was a big video game player, and that just opened the floodgates. And after that, he was writing, and he would, and he made hundreds on his papers last fall in college. And I was like, really, who are you, and what have you done with my son? So I say all that not to brag on him. I say this to say there is hope. There is hope. No matter who you're dealing with, no matter what the situation is, there is hope. Sometimes the light bulb comes and we have no idea how it came or where it came or why it came. It's thankful it did come. So one other thing that I've learned recently with difficulty levels, if we do decide to give an assignment and we say, okay, you can do this, you can do the paragraph, the sentence frame, you can do the paragraph frame, or you can do the free write. I was bad before historically about assigning students, okay, you 3 guys do this, you 2 guys do that, you 3 ladies do this. And I don't know that how really best and adult appropriate that was. I'm thinking it's better to give students choices about what difficulty level they decide to do. And I attended a wonderful webinar that an instructor in Texas did and this summer on links, and she said, I always give my students choices deciding on the difficulty level. And I thought, that's a great idea. And being from Texas, she said, we can use the salsa, the mild salsa, the medium salsa, and the hot salsa to differentiate between mild, easier assignment, medium assignment, and hot being the more difficult assignment. And if you look with me on page 4, I know we are skipping around here and there in the handout, but that's okay. If you look with me on page 4, there's different ways that we can do that. And she advised against using like easy, medium, hard. And I think I was really resonating with that because I think especially when we say easy, it makes the student feel bad because they're not really doing, maybe they don't think they're doing the best they can, and something that's hard is intimidating. He suggested, and I really resonate with, using words like we see on the screen and at the top of page 4. Almost there, got it, feeling strong, rookie, pro, Hall of Famer if you're into the athlete, Olympic version with bronze, silver, gold, salsa that we saw just a minute ago. And then good, better, or best reminds me of there was one hardware store that had that, good, better, best. I forget what hardware store had that. So how are we doing? What are we thinking with this? Let's pause here before we get into AI. Thoughts, questions, comments, thoughts about doing these assignments at different difficulty levels, letting students choose. You do this and you have a best practice. Please in the chat, please unmute. What are we thinking?
One thing I've found from living a life of 3 children who don't necessarily want to do homework, interest. If you can also add something levels of interest, because if you have to write about something you're not interested in or you don't have a frame of reference for, you spend too much time trying to understand the topic than to spend time writing about a topic. So what is your real goal? So being careful what we assign as a topic. I like the idea what Kate said, what's open-ended. Yeah, you see in the picture, but you could have put your own swing on that picture.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Someone else.
We had one student in a math class, and he is a neurodivergent student. He does great, but he at one point I get emails from this teacher occasionally that are just, they're funny. And it's a math class, and she said he converted everything into what he called MAGA meters. And I was like, what's a MAGA meter? And she said he had a unit of measurement, and I can't remember what it was. I mean, but it was like, and it had a decimal in it. It wasn't like he was making things easier, right? He's totally opposed to the metric system. The metric system is wrong and horrible, and why do we even have it? And the world is wrong. So he made up his own. And she said, so he converted all his answers into MAGA meters. And she said, she said, I have to know what the unit of measurement is. So he told her, and she said he did it right. And I was like, I mean, he's doing math and he's doing it right. You're doing a lesson on converting measurement, and he converted his measurements. It wasn't to any standard measurement that anyone else in the world understands, but he knows the concept. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the mangas. All right. Anyone else? The chat is not blowing up. So I think we're either getting it or we're feeling good about it, or anyway. Well, thank you for those who participated. And let's dive into the next section. And if I had done this workshop 2 years ago, it would look far different than it does today. And that is because of the explosion of artificial intelligence, or really specifically generative AI, and these tools like ChatGPT and other things that have come out that have the potential to make our lives as instructors so much easier. So let's do this. Let's see. I am going to introduce this technique, and then you're going to need the webcam for this. And again, if you're not on the webcam, you can do it anyways. I just can't see what you're doing. This assessment technique is called fist to five, and you use your fist with it. Am I moving too fast for anybody? We got it so far. Okay, use your fist to do this. 5 fingers mean I really feel good about this and I've got it. 1 finger means I really don't know this. The fist means I have zero idea. The middle finger means what the middle finger means. Please don't, be careful with this with the middle finger when you do this. So, are we familiar with DFID for teachers? Have we ever heard of something called DFID for teachers? Do a fist of 5, and you can, if your camera is not able to do, would you put that in the chat? 1 being, I don't really know, I've never heard of it before. 5 being, yeah, DFID, use it every day. So let's do it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Do fist of 5. Okay, and I'm monitoring there, and thank you that no one's given the middle finger. Seeing a lot of 1s and 0s. What are we doing in the chat? We're seeing 1s, 1s, and 0s, and a nope. I had a nope and a fist of 5. How do you do a nope? I don't know. No, but it works. It works there. All right. So that's a quick and easy way to do assessment. Just as always, be careful with the middle finger when you do that assessment. So let's talk about DFID for teachers. We're going to go out of the Google slide here. Come on, there we go. And we're going to head over to DFID. And I'm hoping that you can still see DFID. Can we still see the screen and we see DFID now? Did someone shake their head? Okay, thank you. All right. Every time we move screens on Zoom, you never know what's going to happen. But So, Diffit for Teachers, Diffit. I'm going to invite you, don't go there yet. I'm going to give you a chance to play with this in a few minutes, but we're not going to do that right now. I just want to try to give you an overview of it before you dive in. So try to hold off on heading over there because I want to show you a few things with this. Chat GPT has gotten a lot of the publicity with generative AI, and I will look at chat as like kind of generative AI 1.0. There's really more advanced new stuff comes out every day. It is unbelievable. But I love Diffit for Teachers because it is for teachers. And so what can you do with Diffit? Well, this is one of those resources that's free, and you can get basic stuff for free. And then there's also you can buy the super duper version, but the free version does a lot. And they give you 1 month of the super duper stuff up front. And I just got a code the other day to get 4 more months of the super duper stuff for free. And I'll share that code with you later because it said you can send this to your colleagues, and you're my colleagues, so I'll send it to you. So, Diffit for Teachers, what you can do is you can put in one of the tabs is literally anything. So you could put in a topic or a theme or a question. That's one thing you could do. You could also put in an article. You could paste a link to the article. If there was an article on the web that you wanted to use, you could paste the link to it. You could put in a PDF. You can also take the title of a YouTube video, or not the title, excuse me, the link to the YouTube video and put it in as well. And all these things are going to generate some learning tools, which are unbelievable. You can do a text, you can paste in a text, you can upload a PDF document. You could also do this with a vocabulary list. If you had 10 vocabulary words or 5 vocabulary words that you're trying to get your students to learn, you could use this as well. So let's see how this works. So literally anything. Let's see here. Do anybody want to suggest a topic of learning that you're doing or have done recently?
Yeah, try federalism.
Oh, everybody's favorite, federalism. Glad to see we're teaching some government. So I'm putting in the topic. Now we can choose reading levels that go all the way up from second grade to, they say 11th plus, but I've done some work to see how accurate these grade levels really were using Fleisch-Kincaid. And these are pretty darn accurate, but I would say that 11th grade choice they have is it's college level material. But let's say we want to do sixth grade, we want to use this in English, and that does give you the choice between informational text and fiction. I would think probably most of the time we're going to be working with informational text with what we do with our students. And so we are going to go ahead and then see what we can do with federalism. I'm going to click on this button at the bottom that says generate resources. And it's going to do its thing while it gives us tips and maybe tries to sell us the super duper version as well. It's got to take a second and think. Oh, look at what we've got. So we put in federalism. We've done for sixth grade resources. We've got a slideshow here that we can use that has been generated on federalism and some different activities that we can do, pictures that we can have. We can choose between this thing. Quite sure. Oh, this is the image for the guy. That's for the study study of federalism. So we've got that. We've got slideshow that we can use. We've got an adapted reading passage at the grade level that we have chosen. We have a bullet point summary of that reading passage. We have key vocabulary words that come from that passage, which are defined. They do a decent job of giving a fairly simple, straightforward definition, and that's based on grade level as well. You're going to get a more complex definition at the higher grade levels. And you can add images to this. You can edit if you're not happy with the definition they've given you, and we can copy this and use this for learning techniques. They've given us some multiple choice questions. We can add questions. We can edit those if we want to do 3 choices instead of 4. We can it'll show us the answer, which is always something that we want. And we could copy these things as well. It gives some short answer questions we could write about. It gives some open-ended prompts we could write about, and we can edit those. Because I don't always love everything that generative AI creates, but I love it as a thought partner where it can give me an idea and I can take what they give it and change it and modify it and make it what I want. So, it's just amazing. And then it says, are you ready to turn your content into student-ready activities? And I would say, heck yeah, give me some of these student-ready activities. And it gives you every graphic organizer under the sun. We've got the ever popular Frayer model. We've got a 3-2-1 reading summary, a bubble map. We've got reading with discussion questions. We've got all kinds of stuff, basic slides, printable documents. We can do this as a PDF. We've got all these different graphic organizers. We've got vocabulary tools. Oh, there's more things than we could possibly ever use. But the beauty of this is we want to do the same reading passage or we want to do the same topic. I could do this for 3 or 4 or 5 potentially groups of students, or just 2 groups of students. I could do this one activity for grade level 2, one for grade level 5, one for grade level 8, and what have you. So Diffit is easy to use on the front side where that'll ask you to create an account and you can sign in if you're using Gmail, you have a Google account, you can sign in with Google. You can also create a username password if you want to do that and go in with this. So I could talk a lot about Diffit. What I would like for you to do is play around with it. And so what I'm going to do is give you about 10 minutes. And so Diffit for Teachers, Diffit for teachers. And I think if you just Google Diffit, it would come up as well. Go ahead and go to Diffit and play around with it. I'm going to give you about 10-ish minutes to do it. Your mission is to kind of get familiar with it, play around with it. And when we come back after this, let's talk about what you thought was valuable, how you can think about, especially how can you use this? How would this be of benefit to you in your teaching and your students' learning? So what questions do we have about what I've asked you to do? Let's see. Is it free in the about Diffit? And the answer is yes. There's a basic free version. There is a pro version, I think they call it, that does have a cost. But you can get that pro version of a month for free. And I've gotten it for 3 additional months for free because I didn't sign up for the super duper version. That's a good question. Other questions on what we're going to do in the next 10 minutes with playing with Diffit? Okay, we're going to come back then as a whole group at about 10, or excuse me, you're in Central Time, so this is going to be 9:54 Central Time, and we'll come back then. So play around with Diffit, and Stephanie's ready and excited. She's ready and excited. So play around with Diffit. I'm going to be here if you have questions as you're going through. I will be happy to try to answer those. So play, have fun. See if it'll work for you, see how it will work for you, and we'll talk in a few minutes. All right, let's come back, please, as a whole group, and I'm glad that you've had a chance to check out Diffit. I have put in the chat a code that I received recently to extend a premium trial. This gives you all the bells and whistles for up to 4 months. They will give you usually a month free premium off the get-go, and then this code will give you an additional 4 months if you find this valuable and choose to use it. Several folks put some reactions in the chat, and thank you for that. Any other thoughts on Diffit? I do hope you'll find it to be an amazing tool to use and be there. It's kind of like the unpaid teaching assistant that we've always wanted. And it's the budget-friendly teaching assistant, which in adult ed is we really need. We need someone who worked for nothing. Oh wait, no, that's us.
I found it interesting that when you click in the box to do whatever you want to search for, Mine was trying to autofill. I don't know if anybody else's was. I didn't realize that at first, and I thought, but that is weird that a lot of people ask about digital equity to do a lesson plan. So I did that one. And then I went back and I thought, huh, that's weird. And then went back and I'd done something on quadratic equations. So I clicked that one, and it was really interesting, the definitions they came up with and broke down of information about quadratic equations and how to solve them, even though it wasn't its intent.
Well, I do hope you'll find it valuable. Share a couple other things here. And these seem almost like in comparison to different, like, so long ago, but these are some of the tried and true ones that have been around for a while. And what I would have been highlighting in this workshop 2 years ago. And I'm on page 2 of the handout just to show a couple of other good resources that do leveled reading resources in particular, because it's great where we can have a class discussion on a reading, on the same reading at all different reading levels. And that's something I dreamed about for years as an adult educator, and we have that technology now. It's incredible. So ReadWorks, which is a familiar name and was one of the heroes during the pandemic for creating assignments for students, has leveled reading resources. And if you're with me on the bottom of page 2, they do have things that they call step reads inside ReadWorks, where you can get an original reading article and you can step it down, so to speak. And so some articles, they may give you a step read 1, which is a less complex version of the original article, and then even down further, step read 2, an even less complex version of ReadWorks. ReadWorks is free, and I believe just like so many other resources, it's one of those where you can get a premium and advanced version of this, but they do have a basic version for free. So this is one, it's pretty easy to use. Always, when I first start out with a new resource, I go to YouTube, I watch a video about an experienced person using it, and then I go to town with it, is how I learn tech and play around with it a bit. So ReadWorks is good, and we got some love in the chat from several people about ReadWorks, and thank you for those comments. So ReadWorks is one. We can sometimes get 2, sometimes get 3 different versions of the same article there. Newsela, which used to be really good for the free stuff, and now not so much. But it still does. If you do current events in your classroom, Newsela is still a great tool. The Newsela Lite is free, and it provides 4 different current events articles at 5 different reading levels. And they do say that this Newsela Lite will be free forever, and I hope that they live up to that promise. But it has, in addition to the articles at different levels, some other things as well: customizable writing prompts, quizzes, etc. And if you look at the screen toward the right, this shows you the 5 different reading levels that it offers, and it does it in Lexiles, which we don't always speak Lexiles in adult ed. I think that's more of a K-12 deal, and I think it's more that only the reading snobs will use the Lexile levels. So there is the max is the hardest one, and then the lower the number, basically, with a Lexile, the easier the reading is. So you can play around with that and see. And I'm sure there's I know there are Lexile to grade level converters out there. I don't know off the top of my head what 1040 or 570 converts to. Becky Lemke might, I know. But let's see, Megan saying in the chat, Common Lit's okay. Okay, so Megan gives it a so-so, more options, different levels. Thank you, Megan, for that, or Megan, however your name may be pronounced, and forgive me for mispronouncing it if I did. So those are some other tried and true things that we can use for differentiate reading instruction. And if you're using something else, please put that in the chat as well. If you have another resource specifically with reading where we're able to do multi-level things, we would love to see it and love to hear that, and thank you for those. So tried and true runs, we're going to get away from that. want to try to shift gears a moment because I want to do another activity where we can talk in small groups. But I'm going to go in the Wayback Machine here to when I first started teaching in adult ed as a young instructor. One answer to differentiated instruction is individualized instruction. And I remember as a young instructor, I taught a lot of classes individualized where I had a room full of students and they were all doing different stuff. And so I would run around like a chicken with my head cut off, dealing with a student. Oh, fractions. Yeah. Okay. So 1/2 plus 1/3. Oh, we need to get a common denominator, which I think is 6, and we need to change each of those. And we do that. And yeah, the answer is pi. So, okay. Oh, let's go. Oh, grammar. Yeah. Yeah, we'll help you with that grammar exercise. You ain't got no reason to be using bad grammar. That's the first thing you need to keep in mind. And then I'm racing over to this person when we're studying literature, and then, oh, the science graph. And man, at the end of the class, I was exhausted, and I was only 25 years old at the time. I was running around like crazy. So, yeah, you can do individualized instruction is one way to deal with differentiation. But I want to put up a quote here from someone I know very well. I felt a lot of times that in trying to meet everyone's needs, or in other words, all the learners in my class, I felt like I was meeting nobody's needs because I was just constantly in a whirl running around the room, different things. And, at the end of the class, I wondered, did I really do anything? Was I successful in helping my students learn? Many of them, met their goals and passed their GEDs or whatever it was that we were working on at the time. But I wondered sometimes how effective I was with racing around the room like that. So anyway, oh, thank you, Kim. Okay, so you can do individualized instruction if you want, but I don't know that that's really the best way to meet all of our learners' needs. I'm going to suggest grouping as a better way to go. And if you'll join me on page 6 of the handout, you'll see some suggestions about using flexible groups. I really love groups for a number of reasons. First and foremost, with that individualized class, you really don't have a class. You just have a group of individuals who are there. And I think attendance suffers anytime that we've got a class like that. There's no, people feel like, well, I can do this on my own at home. Why do I even need to be here in classroom? Just, the instructor's there. But we miss out on that group bonding. We miss out on that group cohesion. I just think the class is not as good as it could be if we're doing grouping. And so many times I've tried to explain something to a class of the students, but somebody else in the class gives an example or explains it in such a way that I never would have thought of. And there's instant, oh, okay, I understand that now, where we don't get that when we're doing totally individualized. So we can create groups in a lot of different ways based on the activity we're doing. We can do them at random. We can group students of like ability together. We can do it based on, taking a topic in a particular direction of interest. So, a lot of different ways that we can go with groups. And I think groups a better way to go. And I would love to hear some love in the chat or how you're using groups there. But while we're thinking about that, I have a couple of suggestions about how you could do grouping, even if you've got students at a lot of different levels. And this is on page 9. I know we're flipping around here and there in the handout to various parts. These are some ideas that I picked up from Dr. Lennox McClendon, who was one of the leading voices in adult ed for many years until his retirement a couple of years ago. So let's say, for example, and on the handout, top of page 9, you've got a 3-hour class. Maybe this is a 3-hour evening class that meets on Tuesday and Thursday nights, runs for 3 hours. And at the beginning of the class, you're not going to have the whole class there because people are trickling in. That's just the way life works. So that might be a time to do, to check in with students. They could work on individualized stuff. Okay, 6:30 though, you've got a cohesive group enough to go. And maybe we could divide that class group into an A and B group, or divide groups however however works for you. And then you can do a group teaching session for an hour with one group of students. Your other students are doing their individualized stuff. Then perhaps for a 30-minute period starting at 7:30, you're going to do a whole class topic on something that everyone can learn from, everyone can relate to. And you're doing your whole group stuff where you're getting students to encourage each other, etc. And then, yeah, that last hour, maybe you're working then with the other group. What possible way, but we could do this in 50 different ways. That's just a potential suggestion. And again, the big thing to get away from just trying to teach the class individually. I have seen, and with my own experience, I have very seldom ever seen an instructor who inherited a class that was all individualized and decided to do more group work with it that ever went back to just doing individualized work. I have never seen that or heard of that because I think it's a lot more effective when we can do in groups. So that's one what potential way we could do it. Lennox always talked about the backward piggy, which I thought was funny, and that's backward piggy because it's piggy spelled backwards, IGIP, or in other words, the I stands for individualized, the G for group, the I for individualized, the P for planning. And this, this is a way that this could look in another 3-hour class. We've got the first hour individual work, the meat of the class when your students have shown up. 7 o'clock, we can do a whole class lesson on whatever. And then the last part of the class, we could do some more individualized stuff and then some planning in the last part. So it's it's being flexible, but I think that's really that's what we do in adult ed. We never know who's going to show up in any particular class, so we do this all the time anyways, because since we don't know what's coming up. I would just encourage you, if your class right now is all individualized, to think about ways you could do some more group instruction. It will make your life a lot easier. I think the students will benefit from working together. And I think it will just make your class function better. Your attendance is going to improve because students will get to know each other and start to care about each other and work better together. So, different ways to go with this. Okay, how are we doing? How are we doing? Questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, hearing it none, and I did do some wait time. I'd like to do this. And Kim, I'm going to give you a warning here for if we could do. Oh, there we go. I hit the wrong thing. Okay. For if we could get ready to do breakout rooms, please. What I'm going to ask you to do here in just a second is go to a breakout room, and we're going to have an open discussion inside this breakout room based on what we've talked about with differentiation. I know we've got folks here on this webinar today who are experts in this, who have some really good and innovative ideas on how to do this and make this work. And maybe we need some reflection time about some of the things we've talked about. So this is really, we're going to do this for about 10 minutes, maybe till about 10:20. But you have some choices inside this discussion. You can reflect on something that we've learned or talked about today. You can talk about your challenges, and always when we offer challenges, we're going to try to offer some solutions as well. We can talk about some best practices with differentiation. Maybe this is something you do in your class and you're great about it. You've got this idea and you want to share it. And thank you in advance for sharing it. Maybe you want to raise some questions that other folks in your group can help out with. So the Cliff Notes version of this is you can either reflect, talk about challenges, solutions, talk about best practices, or ask questions inside your small group that we're going to divide to your breakout room group in a minute. And please, when you get in your breakout room, choose a group leader. Leaderless groups are anarchy a lot of times. We don't like anarchy. We want to have a good discussion. So maybe you could have the person that's been in adult ed the longest. That could be your first question. How long you been in adult ed? The person that's been in adult ed the longest, how about that person step up and be the group leader? And so a lot of different things you could do: reflect, challenges, best practices, questions are the Cliff Notes version. So we'll be in this for 10 minutes, so maybe till 10:20, 10:21. Kim, are we ready to roll to put folks in breakout rooms? I guess so. I guess so.
We chose our team leader right at the very end, which is Robin, and she's like, "What? And then I quickly got out of the class.
See what it's like to work with her all the time, Robin?
Well, I must say, as the person with the third most experience
In
with
a room of three.
working with adult learners, apparently it didn't matter. That's fine. I can share.
That's hilarious. I've been in adult ed so long. I remember going to a conference and being the person who had the least amount of experience there. I can guarantee you I can go to almost any conference now and be the person who has the most experience in adult ed. That is just like
What's that old saying? We're not getting older, we're getting better.
I generally would agree, but this has been the longest 6 months of trying to get my hand to work.
More experienced, more experienced.
Growing,
There we go.
growing old
There
is
we go.
What was that, Kate?
Oh, I was just being snarky. I was saying growing old is mandatory, but growing up is optional.
There we go. There we go. I like that. I like that. So we had hopefully a good chance to talk and reflect a little bit on some of the things that we were learning and talking about with differentiated instruction. And I'm going to open the floor for some great things you heard during the breakout session. And I'm going to ask Rebecca, who was in my group, if she wouldn't mind to talk about two great things that she was doing in her classroom, one with vocabulary instruction and one with teaching math, if she wouldn't mind to get the ball rolling to share those two cool techniques she was doing. And Rebecca, thank you in advance for talking about what were doing with Magic School AI and your math teaching. Or did we lose Rebecca?
She just
Are we?
coming back in, but she did not hear any of that.
Let's say it again. Rebecca, are you back? Rebecca? Ah, okay. Rebecca, would you mind unmuting and talking about the things you did and you mentioned in our small group with the what you're doing with the vocabulary and Magic School AI and with your math instruction?
Yep. Oh, if it lets me here. Okay. Sorry, I got dropped off the meeting.
No worries.
Magic School AI, what I do with them, it's really neat, is I'll pick out different vocab from our Burlington English or from other things that we're doing, and you can pop the vocab words into Magic School AI you can even put your students' names in there and it will create a story using the vocab words and your students' names. And then we go through and read that story, and they really enjoy that. Some of the stories can be pretty funny. I've done stories about going camping. They're pretty good, and they gives them a chance to learn all their vocab words in a fun way. And then when I was teaching math, which I'm not doing right now, but when I was, I would take my higher level students and pair them with the lower level ones. And after we would do instruction for the day, I would do my teaching. I would have the higher level students reteach the lesson to lower level. So kind of reinforced it for both of them. And the lower level got it taught to them in two different ways. So that's what I did with my classes.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Rebecca. And thank you, Jeremy, for putting the link to Magic School AI, which is another generative AI application that specifically for teaching that's got a lot of functionality, a lot of different things that we can do with it. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Appreciate that. Someone else, some highlight from your group, something you shared, something someone else shared that the whole group needs to hear, please.
So our group, Jennifer actually had me by a couple of years in terms of experience, but I told her she did not have to report out because that's her least favorite thing in the world to do. So since I was second, I'll report out for us. We spent pretty much all our time talking about different ways to use DFID, and people were talking about like thinking in terms of specific classes that they teach. Sarah is one of our newer teachers here at Cornerstones, and she said, you know, she uses a lot of videos in her math classroom to help illustrate how to do things. And she had just taken a YouTube video link, put it in, and generated a Google form, which works great because our classes are online, that she could use that had questions based on the video to help focus the students on what they needed to take from that video. You know, Jeremy listed specific topics that he wanted to look at. Carla was thinking of a specific student who really wants homework to take home. And all of us know if you're trying to come up with additional things beyond the classroom work that you've done for students to take home and study, that can be a whole rabbit hole to go down for planning. And she said, I can't wait to just put in the topic that we covered in class and see what it will generate for this specific student who wants this take-home work, to try and do that. And she said what she had put in for a search, just because she wasn't sure what to do, was just mashed potatoes and gravy. And you would not believe how much information she got about mashed potatoes and gravy. And Jennifer actually had put in stoichiometry because her daughter had finally decided that chemistry was not for her and stoichiometry was what closed the deal. And she asked it to give her a definition at like a second grade level. And stoichiometry in chemistry is like the mass of the equations has to balance, right? So it talked about making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and the mass of the components that you start with is going to be equal once you put them together into your sandwich. It's going to be equal to the mass of the sandwich. So we talked about, you know, if you're looking for one more way to explain a difficult concept and you can't find the words to make it helpful to the students, understandable to the students, going in and saying, give me a simple definition for this that I can use.
Love it. Thank you, Becky and group. That is awesome. Let's hear from one more group.
I'll be
One
brave.
more person.
I'll tell you, we talked about, we've seen a lot of our large groups kind of fall apart at 3 weeks. And it seems like what's happening is a lot of people are doing shift work and they're switching from days to nights, nights to days, or they're switching from Monday, Wednesday, Friday to Tuesday, Thursday. So they're falling in and out of groups. And so we've been kind of kicking around, like giving snippets at different times, and trying to pull in the groups a little differently. So we were kind of brainstorming on that.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, it's always good to take that practical situation and come out with a good plan. Let's just take 45 seconds now and just kind of reflect. We've seen a lot of different things today. We've been introduced to some different techniques and maybe a different app with different and some other things. Think about think about whatever your next step is. What am I going to do? What am I going to do more research on? How am I going to apply what I learned today? Let's just do 45 seconds of quiet reflection. I've had a little reflection time, and the reflection certainly doesn't end here. I do hope that this will give you some good ideas, and I do hope you've really picked up something today that will make your life easier and make your teaching more enriching and more fulfilling for your students. Well, thank you all so much. It was my joy to be with you yesterday and today, and I do hope that we'll be able to meet again in the future. And hope we can get the summer conference back together. I'll get my cornhole rolling again, and look forward to seeing you again in whatever capacity. But thank you all so much, and be kind with the evaluation. And we will see you when we see you in the future. Best wishes. Stay warm this winter, and may your spring semester be awesome and everyone learn a lot and have a wonderful rest of your day today.